feeling unwell. And of course, finally, the most important thing, please do not intermingle. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would now like to kickstart this afternoon's our German-Singaporean Plastic Recycling Forum with our very first welcome remarks by Jens Rübbert, our President of Singaporean German Chamber of Industry and Commerce, SGC, on stage for his opening remarks. Right this way, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good to take off the mask from time to time, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, Minister of State Desmond, Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment and Ministry for Home Affairs Singapore, His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Norbert Riedel, German Ambassador to Singapore, His Excellency Ambassador 𝗏𝗏𝗃 Austrian Ambassador to Singapore. Joining us virtually, as we heard, Dr. Hermann Hüwels, Managing Director of the Environment, Energy, Industry Division at the Association of the German Chambers of Industry and Commerce, DIHK, and of course, Dr. Philippi, Executive Director and Board Member of the SGC. SGC members, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Singaporean German Chamber of Industry and Commerce, I'm very delighted to welcome you today to our hybrid German-Singaporean Plastics Recycling Forum 21. We are pleased to have many guests joining us on site here and virtually in Singapore and Germany. I also would like to extend a special welcome to our panelists who will be speaking on the topic, the journey of plastics recycling and a future vision. Mr. Edwin Q, President of the Plastics Recycling Association Singapore, PRAS. Then we have Mr. Jakob Lambsdorff, CEO of 𝗙𝗲𝗿𝗺 Singapore. We have Mr. Holger Lindner, CEO, Product Division TÜV Süd. And as I said before, joining us virtually as well, Dr. 𝗚𝗲𝗿𝗺𝗺, CSO, CTO, and CDO of Leistritz AG. The panel will be moderated by Ms. Margit Kunz-Winluan, Deputy General Manager of the SGC, who I also warmly welcome. Last but not least, I would like to welcome Mr. Joachim Ihrcke, Chairman of the SGC Sustainability Committee, who will do the closing later on. A big thank you to all of our esteemed guests and speakers for joining us today. Sustainability is the ability to exist and develop without depleting natural resources for the future. It has never been more important. Sustainable practices should be embedded in everything that we do, economically, environmentally, and socially. The Earth cannot maintain its ecosystems, and our communities will not be able to function if we would engage in damaging processes that harm our environment, such as non-circular economies that lead to accumulated waste and overconsumption of natural resources. Singapore has identified and addressed the waste problem in its Zero Waste Master Plan that was released in 2019. The publication points out 3 major waste streams that Singapore plans to act on, being food waste, electrical and electronic equipment waste, and packaging waste, including plastics. Today, we will focus on plastics waste and plastics recycling. And I would like to highlight SGC's idea and goals in the area of plastics recycling specifically. With plastics recycling, we can convert waste into useful products and conserve natural resources. It's a critical aspect of sustainability that supports our vision for a greener, better, and a zero-waste future. In 2020, the SGC published the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. This was initiated by, from our sustainability committee. The SGC then compiled the relevant data, worked out and published the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, which addressed the importance of plastic recycling in Singapore. By the way, it's called 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 because the word green book is already protected in Singapore, and grün means green. It's the German word for it. This is covered by the Zero Waste Master Plan, German recycling capabilities, and international cooperation for bottle-to-bottle recycling plant in Singapore with an outlined plan to later serve Southeast Asia as a center of excellence. On August 12th, last year, I had the honor of meeting the Minister for Sustainability and Environment, Ms. Grace Fu, to present the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, the first one to her, on behalf of SGC and our partners. Following the handover, she graced the virtual SGC dialogue on sustainability and plastics recycling as a keynote speaker. The 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 served as the initiator and subsequently set the stage for the founding of the Plastics Recycling Association of Singapore, well known as PRAS. Subsequently, we will have a panel discussion, and I would like to, the SGC now is a founding member of PRAS. Together, we reached a new milestone, and PRAS was unveiled and officially launched in August this year, in the presence, again, of Minister Grace Fu. During the launch, PRAS signed MOUs with international partners on the basis of extending multinational collaboration in the area of plastics recycling. Amongst them, we had 2 German institutions that signed MOUs, namely the Technical University of Munich, TUM Germany, and TUM Asia in Singapore, as well as the well-known Fraunhofer Institute for Molecular Biology and Applied Ecology, IME. The founding of the PRAS underscores our aim of deepening the multilateral relationships to support plastics recycling in Singapore and in the region, as we work towards our vision of a zero waste and sustainable future. In particular, both Singapore and Germany place high importance on sustainable development. While Singapore is expanding its commitment towards sustainability and has a growing waste management and recycling industry, Germany is well known for its waste separation and recycling system technologies and process knowledge. Given that both Singapore and Germany already enjoy strong cooperation in many areas, we now have another topic for the 2 countries to collaborate, the plastics recycling sector. But our sustainability journey does not end with plastics recycling, ladies and gentlemen. I'm also pleased to announce that today we will be launching our latest publication, which highlights sustainability opportunities for companies in Singapore on the basis of the Singapore Green Plan 2030. In today's conference, we will get to hear first-hand information on Singapore's sustainability strategy and the developments in plastics recycling in a keynote speech by our guest of honor, Minister of State Desmond Tan. Dr. Hermann Hüwels from the Association of German Chambers and Industry and Commerce, DIHK, will provide insights on how Germany successfully set up its regulatory framework on tackling plastics waste and implemented its extended producer responsibility. And subsequently, we will have a panel discussion. I would like to encourage you to participate actively in the Q&A session, where you can ask our panelists your questions. I would like to extend my deepest thanks and appreciation to our partners for their support, the General the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy, the DIHK, the Federal State of Hessen and Hessen Trade and Invest Enterprise Singapore, the Singapore Manufacturing Federation, Advantage Austria, and the Plastics Recycling Association Singapore, and of course to our partner of this forum today, the German Embassy. Last but not least, a big thank you to the organizing team of the Singaporean German Chamber of Industry and Commerce for making this event happen. This was a lot of work, as usual, to prepare and organize such a conference, even in these days with a bit more difficult preconditions, and this is really greatly appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to our journey and seeing where our partnerships will take us in the years ahead. Without further ado, I wish you an insightful event ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jens. And of course, we will be doing our needful to desanitize the microphones before we, of course, invite our next speaker up on stage. This is, of course, none other than an introduction by His Excellency Dr. Norbert Riedel, Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany to the Republic of Singapore. Can I invite you on stage, please? Thank you very much, sir. Shall we give you a big hand? Come on. Thank you.
This is for Jens. Yes, you are enjoying without mask. I see that, yes. Dear Minister of State, Desmond Tan, dear President of the Singaporean Chamber of Industry and Singaporean German Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Jens Rübbert, Excellency, Ambassador of Austria, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me to this German-Singaporean Recycling Forum. I think there can be no doubt that this is a highly timely event. And fortunately, there can be no doubt either that its subtitle is absolutely correct when it refers to plastic waste as a worldwide crisis. We have all read the ever more alarming news articles about plastic litter in the world's oceans. We all know that the pristine resources spent on the production of disposable plastic objects could be put to much better uses. Obviously, a global problem of this size calls for multilateral action. And for this, we have fora like the United Nations Environmental Assembly. Last month, Germany was one of the co-organizers of the Ministerial Conference on Marine Litter and Plastic Pollution that was meant to prepare the next session of the Environmental Assembly. Singapore participated both in the conference and in the preceding informal meeting of like-minded countries that are aiming at a binding international agreement on plastic pollution. Our two countries clearly share the same approach to this important issue. But ladies and gentlemen, while ambitious multilateral action of this kind is essential, it needs to be completed by bilateral cooperation. We have such good cooperation at the government-to-government level, where my embassy, for example, fostered an informal exchange of experience between the National Environment Agency and the Federal Agency for the Environment on regulatory questions linked to recycling and producer responsibility. Today's event will also devote some attention to these questions, and we certainly stand ready to support the continuation of this important regulatory dialogue. However, it is clear that this dialogue could not be fruitful if it were limited to the government-to-government level. What we have to aim at is the transformation of our economy towards a sustainable and circular model. This can only be achieved in close partnership with the private sector, which necessarily will be a major actor in this transformation. I'm therefore very happy that the Singaporean German Chamber of Industry and Commerce took the lead in this area. As already described by President Jens Rübbert, the preparation of the Green Book last year, and the initiation of the Plastics Recycling Association Singapore started a process that will not only contribute to tackling a major challenge of our time, but also does so by bringing together some of the particular strengths of our two countries. Recycling plastic under tropical conditions raises some technological questions that demand novel engineering solutions, as well as some organizational challenges. German companies have substantial know-how in the area of recycling and are also known to be very innovative. Indeed, engineering and innovation skills have shaped Germany's business reputation. These skills are also a hallmark of the Singaporean economy with its strong research and development capabilities. I am tempted to ask, if it is not the two of us, maybe the three of us with our Austrian friends, who can move forward on plastic recycling, who else could? Ladies and gentlemen, last month, the European Union published its strategy for cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. The title already makes it very clear. What we are interested in is cooperation on a broad range of topics with a broad range of partners from the region. This is also the essence of the Indo-Pacific policy guidelines that my government adopted in September last year. No doubt that Singapore is a particularly relevant partner in this context. And no surprise that in both documents, environmental and sustainability questions are highlighted among the topics where cooperation is most needed. We are convinced that in an international setting that threatens to become more controversial, working together on joint challenges is crucial. The sustainability-related activities of the Singaporean German Chamber of Industry and Commerce and the Plastics Recycling Association Singapore make a meaningful contribution in this perspective. This is, I'm the German ambassador, I can say that, this is Singapore-German cooperation at its best. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again to Mr. Dr. Norbert Riedel. And of course, next up, ladies and gentlemen, please join me, put your hands together as we welcome our keynote speaker, also our guest of honor, Mr. Desmond Tan, Minister of State, Minister for Sustainability and the Environment, and Ministry of Home Affairs. Welcome. Thank you very much, sir. Welcome.
Yes, it is good to be masked off, right? His Excellency Dr. Norbert Riedel, Ambassador of the Federal Republic of Germany to Singapore, His Excellency Mr. Peter 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, Ambassador of the Republic of Austria to Singapore, Mr. Jens Rübbert, President of the Singaporean German Chamber of Industry and Commerce, ladies and gentlemen, both here in this room as well as joining us over Zoom. A very good afternoon. I'm really delighted to be able to join you here today at the German-Singaporean Plastics Recycling Forum. I thank the Chamber and the German Embassy for organizing this forum to discuss this important topic, and a timely one too. The challenge of managing plastic waste grows each and every year. The United Nations Environment Programme estimates that we produce around 300 million tons of plastic waste every year, annually. And this is almost the weight of the entire human population. Plastics are, however, resistant to degradation, and the global recycling rates of plastic stands at a dismal 9% of all plastics produced, with the rest finding its way into the natural environment as debris. Other research findings project that if we fail to take action, approximately 12 billion tons of plastic will surround our land and oceans by 2050. This will have severe implications for our environment, public health, and our economies. Studies also suggest that plastic litter in the Asia-Pacific region alone costs its tourism, fishing, and shipping industries $1.3 billion each year, and the total economic damage to the world's marine ecosystem amounts to at least $13 billion every year. Singapore is acutely aware of the challenges arising from increasing waste. Over the past 40 years, the amount of waste disposed of in Singapore has increased sevenfold. Based on the current rates, our only landfill at Semakau will run out of space by 2035. And for those of you who probably know by now, Singapore, we incinerate most of our waste, and they are shipped to an offshore island called Semakau. So at this current rate of incineration, our landfill in Semakau will run out of space by 2035. Plastic waste is one of our largest waste streams. It accounted for almost 30% of all waste disposed of in 2020. However, it remains one of the most challenging waste streams to recycle, with only 4% recycled last year. Part of the challenge lies with the need for people and businesses to be more conscientious about recycling plastic. The other part of the challenge is to reduce the cost and to improve the value of recycling plastic. To address these challenges, Singapore has adopted a circular economy approach to reduce waste and maximize the value of resources by keeping them in use for as long as possible. In 2019, we launched the Zero Waste Master Plan, which laid out our strategies to become a zero-waste nation. The master plan included targets to reduce the amount of waste going to our landfill by 30% and increase our overall recycling rate to 70% by 2030. We also introduced the Resource Sustainability Act to provide the legislative framework to manage our priority waste streams, namely our e-waste, our food waste, and packaging waste, including plastics. Under the Resource Sustainability Act, an extended producer responsibility, or EPR, scheme for e-waste was implemented in July this year. The EPR approach makes producers responsible for the collection and the proper treatment of their regulated products when they reach the end of life at licensed recycling facilities. Alba E-Waste Smart Recycling has been appointed by the National Environment Agency as the producer responsibility scheme operator for a 5-year period to perform the duty on behalf of the producers. More recently, we launched the Singapore Green Plan 2030 in February this year. The plan is a whole-of-nation roadmap with concrete sectoral plans and ambitious targets over the next 10 years. Waste management and recycling are part of the sustainable living pillar of the plan, with the other 4 pillars being city in nature, energy reset, the green economy, and resilient future. In the Green Plan, we have front-loaded the targeted reduction in waste going to our Semakau landfill. I am pleased that the Chamber's latest publication, the Green Plan 2030, Sustainability Opportunities for Companies in Singapore, has focused on the opportunities for German enterprises in relation to Singapore's sustainability plans. It testifies the key role of the private sector in delivering innovative solutions to our sustainability challenges and builds on the long-standing contributions of German companies such as 𝗥𝗲𝗰𝗆, Herrenneck, KSB, GEA, Remax, and 𝗥𝗲𝗿𝗺𝗺, which have been actively contributing to Singapore's environment and water sectors. Or let me share 3 areas of opportunities in the private sector for plastic recycling. First, the global paradigm shift to circularity. As the global movement towards a low-carbon circular economy future gains traction, organizations are changing their business models and adopting sustainable business practices such as circularity in product design, recovering resources from products at their end of life, and undertaking life cycle assessments to green supply chains. Consumer demand for sustainability products and services is also increasing, and many companies are reviewing their plastic packaging and setting targets to scale up the use of recycled plastics in their production processes. In short, the shift to circularity is well on its way and will incentivize plastic recycling and the use of recyclable plastics. Henkel, for example, has committed to use at least 30% of recycled plastics in all its plastic packaging for its consumer products by the year 2025. Various companies in Singapore have also made similar commitments under the Worldwide Fund for Nature, WWF, Plastic Action Initiative, PACT, to reduce and recycle plastics or switch to recyclable alternatives. For instance, healthy food chain Salad Stop uses recycled PET in 80% of its plastics packaging and aims to phase out the remaining 20%. Second, the build-up of recycling capabilities for plastic waste. In the first phase of implementing an EPR framework for packaging waste, Singapore will introduce the Beverage Containers Return Scheme. It involves getting producers, such as the beverage companies, to finance the take-back of used beverage containers and refunding deposits from consumers when they return their empty beverage containers at designated return points. Besides encouraging recycling in the community, the scheme will support our industry by aggregating a relatively clean source of plastic waste, such as PET beverage bottles, as a steady supply of feedstock for recycling. This should further drive demand for plastic recycling in Singapore, including the need for more mechanical recycling plants to treat post-consumer plastic waste. The role of the Plastic Recycling Association of Singapore, PRAS, which was recently launched in August, will be critical. I welcome the association's efforts in working with HTP, 𝗤𝗄𝗿𝗃 and 𝗏𝗏𝗄𝗏, I hope I pronounced this correctly, on the feasibility of building and operating a PET bottle recycling plant in Singapore. Such a facility would not only strengthen Singapore's expertise in recycling PET bottles, but also create more jobs in support of a green economy. Beyond closing the plastic loop, Singapore is also studying chemical recycling solutions to convert plastics which are not suitable for mechanical recycling, such as contaminated plastic bags, to higher value products such as pyrolysis oil. Such products could potentially be used to replace fossil fuels as feedstock for the petrochemical sector. Third, international partnership for collaborative innovation and knowledge sharing. Just as no single party can tackle environmental challenges alone, nobody has a monopoly on ideas. Ideas and capabilities are enhanced when we work together for mutual benefit and advantage. The benefits of international collaboration are exemplified in the PRAS plans to establish a plastics recycling center of excellence in Singapore to facilitate the transfer of recycling expertise. The center will require the participation of local and foreign technology suppliers, research institutes, and companies to assist in the design and the growth of local recycling industry. This will help local SMEs build capabilities and create greater opportunities in the regional markets. Advances in precision engineering, manufacturing of recycling equipment, and plastic recycling processes will serve the needs of the wider Southeast Asia region, particularly as many ASEAN countries have embarked on circular economy roadmaps and strategies, and curb the illegal cross-border movement of plastic waste. As partners who enjoy long-standing cooperation in trade and having common interests in sustainable development, Germany and Singapore can collaborate with each other to accelerate the shift toward plastic circularity. We have both pledged to implement the 2030 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and commitments under the Paris Agreement. Our countries have launched national strategies which place sustainability at the core of our recovery efforts and economic development. And our trade links continue to be enhanced under the EU-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, which came into force in 2019. To conclude, where there is demand, there are also opportunities. We are only at the initial stages of plastic recycling journey, and there are many opportunities for growth. German companies are well placed to contribute sustainable solutions through innovative and advanced technology. And I look forward to more collaboration with Singaporean firms to realize our shared goals in sustainability. Let me once again congratulate the Chamber on its publication and wish all participants a fruitful discussion today. Thank you.
Once again, a big thank you to our keynote speaker, Minister of State, Mr. Desmond. And now, ladies and gentlemen, in the meantime, I would like to, of course, invite Dr. Tim Philippi, Executive Director, Singaporean German Chamber of Industry and Commerce, on stage to moderate the official launch. A big hand, please. Come on.
Minister, Ambassadors, SGC President. Today, I'm delighted to share more about our new publication, which highlights sustainability opportunities for companies in Singapore on the basis of the Singapore Green Plan 2030, and about our initiatives to support promoting environmental causes within our business community. Singapore's 2030 Green Plan is an ambitious yet comprehensive strategy that outlines Singapore goals and plans to achieve sustainable development across different areas. The Minister mentioned them already: city in nature, green government, sustainable living, green economy, resilient future, and energy reset. Formulated as a whole-of-nation plan, the government seeks to work closely with businesses, communities, and households to drive action towards sustainable development. Looking back at our activities, the Singaporean German Chamber received very good feedback regarding the practical relevance of our last year's Green Book publication on Singapore's Zero Waste Master Plan and plastics recycling. And for this encouraging echo, we were very grateful. And with the Green Plan and our good experience of last year in mind, we took the next step in furthering our ideas for sustainability and to reaffirm our support for Singaporean and German companies to collaborate in the field of sustainability. And this led to the publication Singapore Green Plan 2030, Sustainability Opportunities for Companies in Singapore. This publication highlights up-and-coming areas for sustainable development, where Singaporean and German companies have the opportunity to value add to Singapore's call for a greener and more sustainable future. Main topics have been identified are recycling, energy efficiency, water and wastewater, as well as mobility. It is well known that German companies, especially our Mittelstand companies or SMEs, the family-owned companies, have much to contribute towards innovation and are powerhouses for highly advanced technologies. Given the need for new technologies and solutions to tackle environmental and sustainable issues, stakeholders in both countries can come together to leverage the ideas, technologies, and know-how from one another to further develop Singapore's potential in achieving a green and sustainable future through the identified opportunity areas. To make this publication happen, we could rely on the support of many. Our SGC Sustainability Committee, the Ministry of Sustainability and the Environment here in Singapore, our partners and members from the sustainability field, and last but not least, my colleagues in the chamber. And now it is my great pleasure to announce the official launch of the SGC Green Plan 2030 publication. And with that, I would like to ask Minister of State Desmond Tutu, Ambassador Dr. Norbert Riedel, and SGC President Jens Rübbert here on stage, please. We have already marked the position, so it's a bit easier because we have to keep the safe distance in. And Jens Rübbert will now hand the publication. And where's the publication? Ah, you have it already. Publication to the minister.
Very nice. We'd now like to invite Jens Rübbert to hand over the new Green Plan 2030 publication to Minister of State Desmond Tutu, and of course in the presence of German Ambassador Dr. Norbert Riedel as well. Here we go. Oh yes, the token. Alrighty, beautiful. Okay, so we'd like to now hand over this token of appreciation from our SGC President Jens Rübbert to Minister of State Desmond Tutu. So very cute. What is that? Very nice. Thank you indeed. Thank you. Gentlemen, please return to your seats. Thank you very, very much. All right, of course, next up, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be inviting virtually our speaker on the topic of German recycling regulation. So we're going to be inviting virtually Dr. Hermann Hüwels, Managing Director of the Environment, Energy, Industry Division at the Association of German Chambers of Industry and Commerce. Most Germans would know it as DIHK. DIHK is the central organization for all chambers of industry and commerce in Germany, as well as 120 locations worldwide with the chambers abroad, such as our very own Singaporean German Chamber of Industry and Commerce SGC, which also happens to be the organizer for today's event. So we're going to get Dr. Hüwels up on screen. So if we can get him up on screen. Beautiful. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Hüwels. Over to you, please.
Hello from Germany. Good afternoon or good morning from Germany. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you in about 20 minutes the German way to avoid and recycle plastic waste. In German, there are two words we have for the same plastic. In English, it is plastics or Kunststoff. Plastic tends to stand for cheap products that are considered superfluous by parts of society and for the problems we have with them. Examples are plastic bags or microplastic in the oceans. If we talk about Kunststoff, we also know that we will continue to need plastic to make indispensable products lighter, more durable, or to keep their price in check. Some examples of high-level plastic named Kunststoff in the German are shown on this slide. 50 million tons of plastics are used in Europe per year, a quarter of them in Germany. Just under 40% of this packaging of all kinds, bottles, containers, bags, 20% is used in the construction of buildings, 10% in vehicle construction, and the rest as parts for electronics, leisure articles, medical equipment, or in agriculture. Plastics have very different life cycles in different applications. Window profiles are in use almost 30 years. Films, hoses, or pipes built into a house sometimes even longer. Plastic parts in vehicles will continue to serve unchanged until they are scrapped. It means an average of 15 or 20 years. In all these cases, the waste issues arises comparatively late. Packaging, on the other hand, is short-lived. They are often waste just after a few weeks or days after their use and need to be disposed of quite quickly. In the 80s, three so-called principles were developed as the basis of Germany's environmental policy: the polluter pays principle, the precautionary principle, and the cooperation principle. The precautionary principle is applied when the use of potentially hazardous substances is restricted. It means that government must act before all the evidence of a substance's harmfulness has been produced. The cooperation principle states that environmental policy objectives should be developed as amicably as possible with the parties involved. Mr. Ambassador mentioned it when he talked about the cooperation between business sector and state. And the polluter pays principle says responsibility for preventing harmful actions to the party that carries them out. The principles are widely applied in German and in the European waste legislation. An example for the application of all these principles is Vinyl Plus, an initiative of the manufacturers of plastic windows and other products made of polyvinyl acrylate, the construction industry and waste disposal companies. In order to avoid a take-back obligation for windows, the companies already in the 90s have voluntarily set up a take-back system. In the meantime, the system has also been introduced in other European countries and ensures that 800,000 tons of products containing PVC are recycled and reused for new products. Stakeholders at all stages of the value chain regularly exchange ideas on ways to further increase recycling in quantity and quality. In German and European waste legislation, the rules that put the polluter pays principle into concrete terms are summarized under the term product responsibility, or producer responsibility. The starting point is the obligation of the person placing the product on the market to take it back and recycle it if the product is to be disposed at the end of the useful life. Those who must expect to get products back will be more motivated to make them long-lasting and recycling friendly. Priority should be given to the use of recyclates in manufacturing. In accordance with this principle, specific regulations are then issued for several product groups. For example, there are now such obligations for end-of-life vehicles, used oil, batteries, and electrical devices. Specific requirements are set for the collection rates and the further treatment of the returns in each case. In most cases, a recovery quota is also set. That means the quantities required for recycling or energy recovery. In addition, a recycling quota is set which is only met if products are sent for material recovery. The quotas are regularly increased by the regulator according to the progress of the recycling technologies. For 30 years, packaging, especially packaging made of plastic, has been the focus of political efforts to reduce waste. The first regulation from 1991 forced all distributors of packaging to take it back at the store. Because it is not very attractive for grocers or retailers to provide space and staff to collect used packaging, industry and retailer groups were given the option to set up a collection scheme for packaging waste alongside normal waste collection. The regulatory model is a combination of the polluter pays principle and the cooperation principle. The food and the packaging industry and retailer groups have made the use of the option for a collection system. Packaging is collected close to households in different ways, depending on the type of packaging. All enterprises involved in the collective system were allowed to mark their packaging used the so-called green dot in areas where you find smaller houses. Each house has several bins with lightweight packaging, paper, organic waste is separated in order to get sufficient quality. Glass is usually collected in larger bins. There, consumers asked to separate white, brown, and green glass in order to simplify and optimize the recycling process. In areas with lots of apartments in larger houses, you find underfloor containers which have a much larger capacity than conventional bins. The packaging ordinance set specific requirements for the amount of packaging to be collected, initially around 30% for plastics, and 2 years later already 80%. Furthermore, sorting quotas were set at the same level. The regulation from 1991 did not say anything about what had to happen to the sorted packaging. If the industry's dual system had failed to meet the quotas, the option of collective collection would no longer have been available, and in-store take-back would have become compulsory. Therefore, the involved business sectors were interested in achieving the quotas in any case. The political idea behind the concept was as follows: if industry and retailers pay for collection and sorting, and the cost for this are allocated to the individual participants based on weight or the effort to recycle the package, the incentive is to avoid unnecessary packaging. Those who do so can offer their product at a lower price and gain advantages for themselves. The thrifty consumer will give priority to cheaper products, and the amount of packaging will decrease. At least in the case of plastic packaging, the calculation did not completely add up. Today, about twice as much plastic packaging is disposed as of 30 years ago. However, it is fair to mention that plastic has partially replaced heavier glass packaging, and that the trend towards single households cannot be stopped by waste legislation. Presumably, we have at least been able to slow down the inexorable rise. In any case, sorting technology and the recycling packaging has clearly received a strong boost. In a total of 7 amendments to the packaging ordinance up to 2018, structural deficiencies in the take-back and recovery systems were corrected, and the ecological requirements for take-back were tightened. For example, a recycling quota was introduced, and most recently it was required that around 60% of the collected plastic packaging had to be recycled. It would go beyond the scope of this presentation to describe all the necessary corrections. 2 examples may be enough. Since collective collection of packaging costs money, some retailers tried to avoid these costs and took off to offering in-store take-back to consumers. These traders deducted these quantities from their contribution to the collective collection system. Quite often they deducted more than they were allowed. The system ran into financial difficulties. As a result, in-store take-back was removed as an option by the regulator. As the collective collection system had to charge the companies high amounts for recycling the plastic packaging, several collective collection systems were formed as competitors. On the one hand, this was a good development as competition triggers innovation and reduces prices. But on the other hand, some companies took advantage of this to quit one system without registering with another. The result was a renewed imbalance in the collective collection system as a whole, because the volume of packaging to be collected and sorted remained high, but the funding was increasingly low. To stop this development, a new authority was installed, which controls the business of enterprises placing packaging on the market and the collective systems. Since 2019, Germany has a new packaging law. It maintains that there is a second collection system for packaging, which is financed by the involved business sector. However, it has long been discussed whether all products containing valuable materials should be integrated into this second collection system. Many products could then be sensibly recycled at the end of their useful life. In the end, two reasons were decisive for sticking to the familiar system. Firstly, products usually have a significantly longer life cycle than packagings, as I mentioned before. Anyone selling, for example, a plastic toy today does not know whether it will be disposed in the same year, in 5 years, in 20 years, or never. This makes it difficult to forecast disposal costs and to attribute them to the respective manufacturer. Secondly, there's no financing system for such products such as the toys mentioned. At present, the citizens pays an annual contribution to the municipality for disposal. How should this have been adjusted? To avoid these questions, the second collection system was limited to packaging again. Requirements for the recovery and recycling became much more demanding. From 22, 90% of the plastic packaging put into circulation must be recycled. 70% must be recycled as new material. The new requirements have stimulated investments by waste management industry in the sorting and processing plants. The problem of using granulates obtained through recycling, it means granulates obtained from plastic waste that can be used as new raw materials, remains a challenge. As long as the oil price was low, recycled granulates could not compete with fresh products. Admittedly, there are more and more companies that use packaging made from recycled waste and advertise it. They expect that the rising number of consumers prefer products which are more sustainable than others. But it remains a challenge for policymakers and industry to make progress here. Two things help. First, quality standards for recyclates and currently being developed to make it easier for consumers to check whether they can be used in their own products. Secondly, oil and gas prices in Europe are currently extremely high. In addition, Germany has set an annually increasing price for carbon dioxide in order to make progress in climate protection. Both of these factors narrow the price gap and give hope that the market will complete the circular economy. I've only been able to give you a very brief presentation of the German part of a circular economy. I could have gone into more detail about the efforts of politicians to promote drinks in reusable bottles and to push back single-use bottles. At the end of my presentation, let me give you a short overview on the upcoming legislation from Europe. A directive from 2019 on the reduction of the impact of certain plastic products on the environment is banning products made of single-use plastic, such as cotton buds, cutlery and plates, drinking straws, stirrers, and balloon sticks. Single-use beverage containers that have caps and lids made of plastic may be placed on the market only if the caps and lids remain attached to the containers during the product's intended use stage. The directive will be reviewed in a few years, possibly adding new product groups. In Germany, the new Circular Economy Act I mentioned before already transposed these requirements into German law. Likewise, a differentiated restriction of products containing intentionally added microplastics is to be expected in European law in the medium term within the framework of the REACH chemicals regulation. A proposal from the Commission is expected next year. Under the heading of product responsibility, the European Union also introduced an obligation for the manufacturers of single-use plastics to share the costs of cleaning campaigns carried out by local authorities. This obligation has also been incorporated into German law, although it is yet to be further specified. When you see overflowing rubbish bins in parks in Germany, I don't know if in Singapore as well, you can understand that there is a need for action. However, doesn't the consumer also share responsibility, since it is he who carelessly throws away the packaging? As a cornerstone of the announced Green Deal of the European Commission, will launch a sustainable product legislative initiative by the end of this year. This initiative will have at its core a proposal to widen the existing eco-design directive beyond energy-related products. The approach is to make the eco-design framework applicable to the broadest possible range of products and make it deliver on circularity. The new rules will in particular address the need to improve product durability, usability, and repairability, addressing the presence of hazardous chemicals in products and increasing the recycled content in products. The European Union will continue restricting single-use and countering premature obsolescence. Introducing a ban on the destruction of unsold durable goods may also be part of these measures. And finally, Europe will work towards strengthening the repairability of products. The aim is to embed a right to repair in the EU consumer and product policies by 2021. You may suggest that all these new requirements will change the way we are producing, consuming, and promoting a real circular economy in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm at the end of my presentation. Plastic recycling, I think, is a good subject for further exchange of experience between Singapore and Germany. So I hope the dialogue will continue. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hüwels, for that insightful speech. I'm sure that was very, very nice. And of course, we would like to now move on to our panel discussion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for the panel discussion, I'd like to invite you to join our Pigeonhole. That's our Q&A app, okay? You would either see it on the QR codes right in front of you, or if not, you would see it on the side of the screens as well. That is on site. So just to make sure that we have got the QR code up and all of you have already scanned in. Very nice, there you go. And of course, for those of you who are our virtual attendees who are, of course, viewing this over Zoom, you can do so by joining in via our Zoom chat, okay? We do have a link in the Zoom chat that you will be able to join us for our Q&A as well. Now, another very interesting thing about this Q&A, which I've never seen before, is this thing I like to call upvote. So if you see a question that you really like and you want it to be discussed, just simply vote for that one, and that question will sort of, be posted up instead, okay? So very, very nice. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would now like to invite our panel moderator. Let's put our hands together for Ms. 𝗤𝗏𝗄𝗆, everybody. She is, of course, our Deputy General Manager of SGC. Can we invite Ms. 𝗤𝗏𝗄𝗆, please? Thank you.
Welcome, everybody, to our next important part of this event, our upcoming panel discussion. We are fortunate because we have 4 fabulous panelists here today, and I would like to invite each of them, or at least 3 of them who are physically present, on stage, but I have to wait a short while because the chairs are here and the table also comes. Wonderful. Okay, so let me start with Mr. Edwin Q, who is currently the chairman of the Sustainability Energy Association of Singapore, who is also the president of the newly founded Plastic Recycling Association Singapore, and who also served as nominated member of parliament in Singapore for many years. He has been actively involved in environmental and sustainability topics in Singapore for many years, and we are very grateful to have you here today. Please, Mr. Q, come on stage. Next is Mr. Holger Lindner, the CEO of TÜV Süd Product Service Division. TÜV Süd is a trusted partner for governments, industry and consumers, as the company focuses on safety standards, quality standards, and also actively develops standards in new and cutting-edge industries and developments. Prior to joining TÜV Süd, Holger Lindner worked for the Daimler Group in various functions. Holger, please join us also on stage. Our 3rd panelist taking part in person is Mr. 𝗥𝗲𝗰𝗆, CEO of 𝗙𝗲𝗊𝗺 Singapore. He is responsible for the 2 operating 𝗙𝗲𝗊𝗺 entities in Singapore, 𝗙𝗲𝗊𝗺 Smart City and 𝗙𝗲𝗊𝗺 E-Waste Smart Recycling. One of his tasks is to find solutions that transform traditional waste management practices with innovative, scalable, and highly digitalized solutions to improve environmental standards. Please also join us on stage. Welcome. And then, but I can't see him, I would like to welcome our 4th panelist, and he joins us actually from Germany. I am talking about Dr. 𝗚𝗲𝗿𝗺_𝗺𝗃, CSO, CTO, and CDO of Leistritz.
Good afternoon from
You
Germany.
will see him shortly. The Leistritz group is, there he is. Hello, hello, Dr. Schwenken.
Good afternoon
welcome.
from Germany.
And thanks for joining from Germany. The Leistritz group is a leading specialist for high-tech solutions in turbine, pump, extrusion, and production technology. I think we are complete, and we can start with the panel discussion. All right. There's an echo. Plastic has been around for 150 years. Especially in the last 50 years, plastic have saturated our world and changed the way we live. Plastic is very versatile material and an integral part of our everyday lives, with many advantages, and can be found in almost every item we use. Initially known predominantly as a single-use material, plastic has evolved over time to a valuable raw material, even when recycled, due to technology advancement and change in mindset. Worldwide, as we have heard, recycling rates of plastic are low. And in Singapore, the situation is precarious, as we have also heard, because so far almost all waste is incinerated and the remaining ashes are thrown in the Semakau landfill. A strong increase in waste is leading to a much faster fill-up of Singapore's landfill. And if the current speed and volume continue, it will reach its full capacity by 2035. As a result, as we've heard, the Singapore government has commissioned studies, analysis, and came up with new legislation and master plans to tackle this issue. And with this background in mind, I would now like to ask my first question, and it goes to Mr. Edwin Q. I would like you to please explain to us what are the most important cornerstones of the waste situation in Singapore, and how will this impact the future of waste recycling in the country?
Thanks, Margaret, and good afternoon, all those who are here and also joining us virtually. Perhaps I could go back quite a few years in terms of how we used to treat our waste, and this was actually using a sanitary landfill at Lorong Halus. And we did this until 1979, when Singapore operated its first incineration plant, an 800-ton per day plant, supplied by German technology by a company called 𝗏𝘅𝗵𝗃. I don't know whether you've heard of this company, but that was a company that helped us set up the first plant. Now, all our waste prior to the incineration, the incinerator that was set up was sent to Halus. And then the ash from this first plant was also sent to Halus. Now, between 1979 and 2000, we built 3 other plants, giving us approximately a further 5,200 tons capacity. And I think the year 2000, we opened up 𝗚𝗏𝗿𝗺𝗺𝗃𝗺. It's actually made up of 2 islands. One is 𝗚𝗏𝗿𝗺𝗺𝗃𝗺, the other one is 𝗚𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃, depending on how you pronounce it. And we actually, put both islands together and using a bund which enclosed between the 2 islands and some membranes, and we then started to put all our ash from all the incineration into this landfill. And you've heard from the Minister of State that this landfill will run out by 2035. Now, after the first incineration plant, we built 3 others. And here again, we are using German technology, using the moving grate of a German company called Martin. We had to use these grates because the first incineration plant just could not incinerate the very wet waste that Singapore generated. So we needed these long moving grates that turn our waste to ensure that there's a proper burning of it. And obviously then the ash was sent across by barges 8 kilometers to Semakau, which is in the southern part of Singapore Island. Now, because of the fact that more than 85% of our population in Singapore lived in high-rise, if you go back many years when Singapore started to build the high-rise flats for low-cost housing, the only way to control in terms of health, cleanliness, and insects was to have these chutes built, and so that it was convenient for all the waste from the kitchen to be thrown straight down these chutes into bins that will be collected. This was good then to ensure that we did not have a problem with our waste. Obviously, the waste was then collected and taken to our incineration plants or to the landfill before 1979. But today, this is our biggest problem in the sense that it's so convenient to throw things down chutes. We have problems trying to encourage our citizens in Singapore to segregate their waste and to recycle them. So what was applicable many, many years ago, 42, 43 years ago, is somehow not applicable now, today, because this has become our biggest problem. Now, I've been asked about what we intend to do as far as 𝗏𝗏 is concerned. And I think in my initial speech, when we launched 𝗏𝗏, the first objective and a mission for 𝗏𝗏 is to try and reduce or increase the amount of recycling from 4% to 30% within the next 5 years. And then hopefully we can bring that up to 70% in 30 years. So that is our biggest problem. And because of land constraints, that's one way we have to bring down the amount of waste that we generate in Singapore, incinerate. The only problem right now is we have problems segregating, and our plastic bags are important because it keeps our chutes clean. So we have this situation where all our plastic bags that are supplied from the supermarkets are used by residents to contain wet waste and thrown down the incineration chutes, the chutes. Now, to keep the chutes clean, you need to wash them every day. So if they don't have bags, it becomes a bigger problem because we'll be wasting a lot of water washing our chutes. So perhaps I can stop there.
Okay, thank you very much for this introduction. I think especially for those of our audience who is zooming in from Germany, this is very valuable because this is a special situation in Singapore and most probably not so well known in Germany. So thank you very much for that. Mr. Jakob Lambsdorff, your company 𝗏𝗏𝗿𝗺 is a German-grown company group with a very strong presence in Asia today. China, Hong Kong, and Singapore are just 3 of the over 200 locations that you have been setting up, or your company has been setting up in the last 50 years. Given China's de facto import ban since 2018, how have plastic waste imports to Southeast Asia changed? And how has this then impacted especially Southeast Asia's infrastructure?
Hello, hello. Yes. Thank you, Margit. And thank you, first of all, for having me here today to share my experiences and thoughts. And thank you also for this question, which I believe is extremely important because it, in a way, sets the scene for where we are today in terms of plastics recycling and the plastics landscape, especially in Asia, but worldwide. If we go back to 2017, China was importing about 50% of plastic waste worldwide. From one day to the next, basically, that was stopped, which created a seismic shift in the market and came as a huge shock, not only across Asia, but across Europe, across North America. Imports to China were coming from everywhere. The first reaction to that was, we need to find alternatives. Where else can we bring our plastic waste? A lot of that went to Southeast Asia. I believe within a year, imports to Southeast Asia went up by 170%. That was not sustainable, of course. The next step was that Southeast Asian countries closed their borders one by one, or at least limited the amount of plastic waste that they would import. Making this more difficult is that the type of plastic waste that was imported or more exported from other countries to Southeast Asia was rather low quality, required a lot of complex sorting, complex recycling, processes and technology that often did not exist in these countries and caused a lot of short-term environmental problems. It even went so far that some countries, such as Malaysia, sent back the plastic waste that they received to, I believe, 13 countries, as a symbol to say, that's not the way we can do it, we have to stop this. So in the short term, that created quite a problem, and I can say it was also a problem for our company. We were also shipping and trading with China at the time, looking for other outlets now. So But as is often the case, what is a problem can become an opportunity, right? We need to find solutions to that, and that's where we are now. And I see it in the mid to long term to be a very positive development, because now we are at a state where we need to find solutions in each individual country. Every country has to find a solution. What are we going to do with our plastic waste? We've heard about it in Germany already. Regulation is becoming more stringent. Recycling quotas are becoming mandatory. Extended producer responsibility is being implemented. And that's something that's not only happening in Europe now, and that's shifting to Singapore as well. We heard Desmond speak about it. And in fact, we here are managing the electronic waste producer responsibility scheme. Similar schemes will follow for plastics as well. And other Southeast Asian countries are also working on these schemes. So that's where we're headed. And I think it's a very positive shift, and it will lead to more recycling in the region. And it's also a big opportunity, of course, for recycling companies to build their capabilities here. And that's something that PRAS wants to support.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much for this aspect of the discussion. We have now covered parts of the past and also of the present situation. And I would like to go a bit deeper into the changes that have happened recently. Also, why are they significant? And Mr. Holger Lindner, to my right, is excellently placed to explain this to us, as his company works very closely with governments, industry, and consumers. And I would be happy if you could explain this a little bit to us.
Thanks, Margaret. Thanks for the opportunity to share some thoughts, because that is a topic I'm really passionate about, because it means that we implement purposeful change. So it's we look at it from a perspective of impact. So many things are designed in terms of theory, in terms of legislation, in terms of commercial viability. But what we try in PRAS, as one very tangible example, is to translate concepts into reality. And that's something where 𝗏𝗏𝗏 plays a central stage. I mean, our role is to enable progress, and progress in the area of making progress safe and secure and protecting people, assets, and the environment for more than 150 years of adverse effects of technology. So it's right at the center of where our purpose is, and the product that we're selling or the service is trust. So, and that's exactly what is happening here. What the pandemic has shown and what the regulations in different parts of the world have shown is that there's a lot of initiatives taking off now and taking place to put sustainability center stage of companies, of people, of governments. And it has unleashed a lot of energy. Funding is flowing into projects that label themselves sustainable. And it has also become a bit fashionable. So now what we need is to really implement things is we need to prove somehow that the intended outcomes are really there, that it's not only lip service, that it's not only projects, but that they're being implemented with all the necessary stakeholders to achieve the much needed and declared outcomes. And that's where, when you look at what we heard today from Desmond, if you look at the different legislations, the Zero Waste Plan and then the Green Plan, but also what Dr. Hüwels has shown, what is happening on a European level, there's always a degree of pragmatism in setting a target, finding a balance between forcing a change of behavior through legislation, regulation, but also encouraging people to really change their behavior through incentives, through investments into infrastructure, through investments into technology. And in the end, to make sure that there are viable commercial outcomes. And I think that's the balance we also need to find if you want to change people's behavior. It must have a right purpose. It must somehow be motivating, not only make your own life worse and less convenient and more expensive, but there must be a positive incentive, and it must make commercial sense for all the players. So that's what the plans have in common. I think from Dr. Hüwels' description of the collective system in Europe, it's quite clear how complex it is and how difficult it is to find that balance. And that's where I think Singapore is in a fantastic place to have a pragmatic approach. Grace Fu, at the launch of PRAS, emphasized several times that the green plan is front-loaded in activities, because now, if the activities start now, they will take effect rather sooner than later. So there is this political willingness and also an ecosystem that allows organizations like us to bring together technology, infrastructure, measurable first steps, and then to show what is needed to scale it up and to really export it maybe beyond Singapore to regional markets and back to Europe, but also to accomplish a reasonable size and create momentum. And that's something, to conclude, we work a lot with governments and regulators in Europe and in Asia and with companies where there is an increasing alignment between purpose and action. And I think as long as we keep making tangible impacts and measurable impacts and avoid that it becomes too much of a marketing activity and buzzwords, I have great confidence that there is an irreversible momentum towards a sustainable development.
Thank you. I think we all hope so. Okay, so the last points have shown very well the situation in Singapore and in Southeast Asia. But we are fortunate, and we also have a panel participant in Germany with great experience. And we have not forgotten you, Dr. Schwenken. So let me ask you to complement the view also from a little bit a global business perspective. Your company is headquartered in Germany and has locations in Europe, the US, and Asia, in particular China and Singapore. In your experience, what has proven to be most effective to change widespread singular use of plastic materials and to achieve more environmentally sustainable solutions?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for being part of this panel discussion. Well, when I reflected from my personal view, I could say when I was a child, recycling of plastics or anything was no topic at all. You just put everything in one bag, you put it into a waste paper basket, and then you're done. And now things have been changed and are changing, and I think that is really very good. And when you ask, okay, what is having a strong impact on that different tackling on waste and recycling, I think there are two major aspects. One is legislation, and as Dr. Hüwels already stated, and also Holger Lindner, I think that has a strong impact on working on recycling, which is a strong aspect, and that is essential in order to make the progress, just that surrounding, which gives a business setup to be successful in that world. The other aspect, which I think is having a growing impact, is that the people, the consumer, are demanding now a more environmentally approach. And I'm very happy to see especially a young generation which really has a very clear goal. And that goal is we have to care about the planet. We cannot continue as we have done before, and we have to care about the planet now. And that is really a stronger and increasing louder voice, which has a strong impact on the industry and on the companies, not only on the recycling itself, but also on the products. So we see a lot of demand in that area. As you may know, we are solution provider for plastic innovations. And we see now not only in the industry field, industry applications, which are now more based on recycling products, but also a higher demand of consumer goods. So there are many things which are obvious. If you look about packaging, there are already solutions in place. But if you look, for example, for your sneakers, there are more and more companies saying, okay, we make sneakers now out of recycled material because they are fashionable, they are cool, and they are fancy to wear. And that force from the consumer side is now increasing globally and has a stronger impact. So we have, as a company for that solutions, we have never seen so many demand in that area of innovative solutions for recycling of material and for building up new products based on recycled material. So if I summarize it up, I can say, I am sure that recycling and new products based on recycled material have left the niche and they are now coming into the middle. And that is a development I really appreciate.
Thank you. I think we all do. And it's exactly as you say, we see more packaging that is reusable. We see recycled materials in places where we did not see them probably 5 or 10 years ago. And I think that is the trend, and also building up on what Holger Lindner shared with us before. I see now 17 votes, and I think we have about 150 participants. So please don't be shy and use the app, cast your own question, or vote for the questions in the chat, because we will come to the Q&A session in a short while. Before we do that, however, let us have a glimpse in the future. At the moment, we are lucky, legislation has changed, the mindset of decision makers has changed, companies will have to change, consumers will have to accept all of these changes. The Plastic Recycling Association of Singapore was recently founded and has a unique value proposition to the various players in the field of plastic recycling. Could you please, Mr. Q, elaborate a little bit more in detail on what the PRAS aims to do?
Thanks, Margaret. I think, as I mentioned before, the immediate mission of PRAS is to increase the recycling rate for plastics. And we can do this in a number of ways. One of them is obviously to set up or encourage the setting up of a plastic recycling plant. And indeed, this is what we are doing as far as PRAS is concerned. We have actually commissioned a feasibility study to look at the viability of actually recycling PET. I think this we consider low-hanging fruits, and we will get, I think, some results from the feasibility study, which, by the way, has been awarded to a German company, HTP, who has also been awarded the feasibility study for the National Environment Agency to look at plastic as a whole for Singapore. What we have engaged HTP to do is to focus on the PET part, where we obviously need to understand, I think, within PRAS and within people who are going to be looking at investing in setting up such a plant, how viable it is, whether there is sufficient PET waste generated in Singapore, and whether there are off-takers for all the plastic pellets or resins that will be treated and generated so that they can be reused again. So this is the first thing we are doing to encourage the increase in the amount of recycling. The second thing that we will be looking at, or we are currently already incorporated, is the setting up of the Center of Excellence, which we call PRCOE, or the Plastic Recycling Center of Excellence, which is currently a committee under PRAS, and this is being chaired by one of our board members, Professor Siram, who heads circularity, the study of circularity and the promotion of circularity within the National University of Singapore. Now, for those who did not attend the launch of PRAS, which was in August, we signed 5 MOUs. I think the Minister of State mentioned that the MOUs will get us a running start when we hit the ground, that we don't reinvent the wheel. These 5 organizations are centers of research, or they are part of universities like TUM, that specialize in specific areas of plastic recycling. And they are many years ahead of us, and I think it's probably the most practical thing is to work with them and get, 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃 in Singapore up to date with the latest cutting-edge technologies in recycling. So that's the next thing that we are doing. And the third thing that we are looking at and encouraging, and through this seminar today and forum, we're hoping to attract many specialist SME companies from Germany and from Austria to look at finding local partners who are in the precision engineering business or engineering manufacturing business to set up partnerships here. So hopefully these companies these specialist companies from Germany and Austria find it viable to set up a facility in Singapore to manufacture the different components that they are already doing in Germany. And one of the things to do is obviously set up a mechanical recycling facility in Singapore to showcase the technology. The next thing is to work with the local partner in Singapore to market the technology and the setting up of these plants throughout the region. And we are looking at ASEAN to start. And these are the 9 other countries. So Singapore hopes to be a center of excellence, at least for the ASEAN countries. We are very familiar with doing business in these countries. And I think for the German and Austrian SMEs, you will find very good partners in Singapore who will be able to take you out. And this is a way for, I think, these specialist companies to be established here where your IP is protected and you have a huge market within Southeast Asia to actually promote your products and your systems, and to be able to follow up by providing services in terms of spares, technical support, etc., from Singapore. I think finally the thing to actually pull the whole thing together is we realize right now the opportunities that are within just ASEAN, but we're talking about many developing countries in Asia, but starting with ASEAN first. There is a great opportunity out there because every country, like Singapore, faces huge problems with plastics. I think you all know that it's very difficult now to export waste plastics to anywhere in the world. So you have to actually have your own local solutions. And I think Singapore is best placed to be able to do that, to be able to provide all the solutions, starting within ASEAN, and obviously in other Asian countries after that. And basically, to do this, we need to establish a center of excellence here that can then showcase all the various technologies that we offer. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think those are many plans, and I wish 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗃, of course, all the best of success. And you have mentioned that collaboration is very much welcome between companies here, German, Austrian. And Singapore is a small place though, and it does attract companies a lot since many years. And I think it would be very good of Dr. Schwenken to elaborate a little bit on this aspect as well, because your company is here. And why is Singapore, despite its size, a strategic location in Southeast Asia for companies? What are the opportunities where you see German and Singaporean companies collaborating and working together? And with the extended producer responsibility in Singapore, would you expect to see more collaborations as a result of it, similarly to what happened in Germany?
Yeah, first of all, I think nowadays collaboration is the best way of inventing new solutions. So instead of doing it alone, we better do it together in the right combination. And that is exactly where PRAS comes into the game. I think from my understanding, PRAS is a kind of a think tank which brings European specialists for recycling solutions together with Singaporean counterparts. And by doing so, we can find that collaboration. I believe this is really an excellent approach, since in our experience, Singapore is offering a very unique setup. So to bring it into a nutshell, I would say we have a really excellent cooperation with all government organizations that is really outstandingly good. The second point is we have a university in Singapore, which are world-class leading on the one hand side, but also really practical driven on the other hand side. That is excellent to cooperate with universities in Singapore. And the third point is in all cooperations we have currently with Singaporean companies, that is really based on a trust and professional setup with a long-term thinking on collaborating to the advantage of both sides. And in that setup, I'm sure that we can build up that center of excellence in Singapore for recycling of plastics. Now you can say, okay, is that all? And my answer would be no, this is just the beginning, because as it has been stated before by the other people in the panel discussion, I think that is the starting point for Southeast Asia. So if we are able to bring that experts from Europe together with the Singaporean companies and that unique environment, we can scale the whole approach to Southeast Asia. So we start in Singapore and then we can adapt it to the local adaptations which are required in Southeast Asia, and by doing so, we scale the business. From my perspective, this is really the right thing at the right time. Starting with purpose, I think we have to care about the planet, and now really seriously addressing this topic is the right thing. The second point is, well, we are not doing only the right thing, we also are business people. So there is a business, we can build up a new industry in Singapore, building up that industry, building up new jobs, which is the right thing to do from business perspective. And the third one is, we can scale that business. We scale it into Southeast Asia. From our side, we are proud to be part of that one, of this excellent approach, and in a collaborative approach with other European and other Singaporean companies to build up that center of excellence and to scale it into the region.
Very insightful, because especially those companies who are new to the market and do not know so much also about this initiative, knowing firsthand from another business leader is always the best way of probably rethinking strategies or taking up strategies that were already in the making. Thank you very much, Dr. Schwenken. We have now a new situation, and as it is always with new situations, they are not always so perfectly organized yet. So TÜV Süd's mission is to provide trust, as you have mentioned before, and you do that through safety, security, and sustainability solutions. I would like to know what is currently lacking in the area of plastic recycling, and where do you see room for improvement and growth?
Thanks, Margit. That is a very comprehensive question, and I'll focus on an example that is close to the activity in PRAS. So what's the purpose is to transform plastic waste as a problem to use plastic as a resource and as an opportunity for business and for forward thinking. That's the problem. There's different angles. We do not have sufficient clarity in terms of regulations, in terms of standards, so that everybody can take a playbook and just copy paste and implement it anywhere in the world and say, okay, if I do that, then the outcome will be good. So we're a little bit in a transition, but there are sufficient existing standards and tools to at least take out uncertainty of certain pain points. And let me give you just an example of what we will look into in the PET recycling here in Singapore. You have two pain points. One is before you recycle the used plastic, and I now don't say plastic waste anymore, I say used plastic, after it's been collected, after it's being separated, cleaned, and what have you. So you still need to check whether you have any hazardous materials in there, any impurities, whether the concentration of the raw material you want to recycle is really sufficient, and whether there is anything in there that is having a negative impact on quality or even on safety. So PET was a good choice because PET itself, the polymer itself, does not create potential dangers if it's processed wrongly. HDPE is different. There the polymer already depends heavily on the process. So we focus on a material, to start with, that is relatively easy to recycle and to put back into areas like food contact, where you go from bottle to bottle or from food packaging to food packaging. So you eliminate already this one unknown or uncertainty from the equation. The other things is contamination. From previous usage of the material, you have things in there that are not properly washed away or segregated. Or you have contamination from the other rubbish that it was disposed of in the first place. And the worst one is, of course, the unknowns. You don't know what you're looking for, but there may still be hazardous materials. So to identify that, we have very established test methods coming from the soft lines industry or hard lines industry, so from different industries that just need to be applied, and that's what we intend to do in a pragmatic manner. So you wouldn't be able to say it's absolutely safe, but we would be able to establish a tolerance level of certain materials for which we can say, okay, that is good enough, that gives us the confidence that we do not contaminate the recycled material. Then it goes through the recycling machine, and the output, you also want to make sure that the recyclate the properties of the material are as good as virgin pellets. And that can be chemical properties, it can be thermal properties, mechanical, and so forth. And for this also we have existing test methods, but not always a complete set of standards. But for a beginning, that's good enough, because these are the biggest two pain points that may undermine trust. That you claim you have a recycled material or reused material, but it's actually not that material that you want. It's a different concentration or it's impurities. And that the properties are as good as raw material that you can basically mix it together and you have a consistent product. So that's how we're going to start. And if you remember what Dr. Hüwels said in the beginning, there is 3 aspects to circular economy. One is, he mentioned that in the end, to design out waste and pollution. It may appear we're not looking into that, but I think we will touch on that as an outcome when we look at, okay, how can we make sure that we get sufficient used plastic as an input for our recycling plant? And then we would look most likely at a very nice design thinking challenge of how to make sure that the variety or variance, number of different plastics used in a certain, the beverage industry or F&B industry or supermarkets in Singapore, that maybe by design you would have to reduce the variety of plastic and focus on fewer plastics and higher volumes. And then the collection process, the cleaning process, and so on. So I think what we're doing here may not be immediately scalable, but it shows at least the parameters that are needed for safety, the parameters that are needed to get a critical mass for commercial operations, and then the entire infrastructure, logistics, and design around that a country, for example, has to design to create these critical volumes. And that's scalable. It may be more difficult to get a big size in Singapore, but you can easily adopt that to other countries and other ecosystems, and you know where you have the biggest leverage. So I'm really excited that this is an initiative far beyond the PET recycling initially, with a lot of opportunities to create jobs and startups and businesses and business models for Singapore and also for the partners involved. That was long.
Yeah, but so enthusiastic. I think everybody really likes listening to that, and it's really good to have this positive energy in this project because it's the way forward and probably the only way forward. Before we have a look at our questions, and I see a lot of movement now, I'm very happy about this. I would like to ask Mr. von Lambsdorff one more question. Your company is heavily invested in future technologies And I would be really curious to understand much better from you which role digitalization could and might play for the future of waste recycling in Singapore and the region.
Thank you, Margaret, and I'll keep it short because I do see a lot of questions that I want to get to that are quite interesting, and I think it's good to answer the audience's questions. But of course, digitalization will play a major role in waste management and recycling operations. If I'm being honest, the waste management industry worldwide and also in Singapore is still very analog. It is in most countries still very basic, especially when we come to, when we talk about collection and traceability of waste. In terms of recycling, there are very, very modern technologies. Recycling plants are digitalized and they're running very efficiently. But when we talk about traceability and when we talk about waste collection operations, that is still lacking. And that's something we are working on. We are working with dynamic route planning. We are working to trace and weigh and find out where all the different types of waste are being generated. We are running pilot programs with cameras in the back of a truck hopper to find out what kind of waste are individual residents throwing. In the future, you could imagine it as such that we can even write a message then to the resident and say, why is this ending up in the waste truck? You should have put that in the recycling bin. So there are a lot of ways to improve traceability, to improve segregation of waste, to then make the recycling process a lot easier. Finally, some quick advertisement for ourselves. Digitalization is also about, or how we use it is through gamification. We have developed here an app called 𝗙𝗲𝗿𝗺 Step Up app, which is a recycling app that incentivizes users to recycle, who will then receive CO2 points that they can transfer to some kind of vouchers and redeem prizes. So that's also something where digitalization can play a role in everyday life of pushing and nudging consumers to recycle. As we all know and as we all discussed, everybody has to work together to make recycling a success. It's governments who have to legislate, it's the industry that has to manufacture cleaner products, and it's consumers that have to recycle properly. And if we all work together, then I'm sure that it will be a success, and digitalization will play a large, large role in the next years in this industry.
Do you allow me to promote the gamification concept? Because it really appeals to the child in all of us. So from first-hand experience, we have one of Jacob's reverse vending machines in the office, and the gamification thing started a competition among our staff to collect and bring plastic bottles and cans from the weekend, and to carry it on Monday mornings to the office to put it in the machine to collect points. And it's really, it has created a completely different perception of reverse vending machine sustainability. It's fun, and it changes behaviors without people knowing it, right? So I really think this is a fantastic angle to engage more people faster than through only legislation and cost and so on. So this is a fantastic element. So try it out. The machines are standing all over Singapore, right?
Yes, very well. Thank you very much. I find it very, very insightful. And probably that is also part of the answer for our first question. So we have a few questions here. You can see them on the screen behind me, and we see them here on the screen in front of us. And we have two top runners with 7 votes. And one goes really in the direction that you already partially mentioned, how to use, how to change the user behavior, basically. Also not only for recycling, but also for not using unnecessary single-use plastic. So besides reverse vending machines and gamification, do you have any recommendations? Also, of course, Dr. Schwenken, please chip in if you would like to address certain questions. But I take it, who would like to answer the question on how to really change consumer behavior? Who would like to say something? Okay, sure. Please go ahead, Jakob.
Yeah, I would also, by the way, afterwards like to tackle the question in the middle. But happy to also get to this question. As I think we've all realized, and as we said, consumer mindsets are extremely important, and consumer mindsets are also shifting what industry, what manufacturers, what brands have to offer, right? A lot of brands are taking the lead now and saying we will produce 30% from recycled plastic. As we heard from Henkel, if we look at the beverage industry, Coca-Cola, Nestle, and so on, they're all saying the same thing. But in the end, it's consumers who are making that push. One area is gamification, but that's not the only one, right? I think we have to start early. We have to start educating in schools. We have to start also creating a mindset where when you recycle, when you segregate waste properly, you also feel good about it, right? At least I feel that way. It's more effort walking to the recycling bin than it is throwing something into the chute. But every time I do it, I think, okay, this was the right thing to do. You've made a tiny, tiny, tiny positive change. And that's kind of the mindset that we should aim to instill in everybody. And I think that's also what was mentioned previously about the young generation promoting that and pushing that and making that a very important cause to them, which I believe it is. So we are heading in that direction. It takes time. It needs awareness. It needs PR campaigns. It needs education from the ground up. But we are moving in the right direction, and I believe that in 10 years we will be much further along than we are now. In 20 years we will be even further. And at some point in time, hopefully, the majority of products will be made of recycled plastic and not virgin plastic, which maybe somebody else can go first, but that does lead me into the next question.
No problem. No problem. You will get the middle question, so let's please reserve that to you. You have also touched a little bit upon the rather limited amount of plastic waste, but I think there is enough plastic worldwide. So if this plant that will be set up in Singapore, hopefully, is then probably also the model for other countries, there will be then safe possibilities to recycle waste, and probably we can leave it with it for this question. Let's go to the middle question. You're very eager to answer that one, Jakob, so let me just read it out. How will costs for recycling plastic be more competitive versus virgin resin? The cost of recycled plastic is still higher than virgin resin.
Thank you. I also want to point out it's the only question that has an actual name associated to it. The rest is from this hacker group Anonymous. So, oh, Stephanie's also there, sorry. But in all seriousness, I think this is a great question and an extremely important question, because we are past the point of no return when we talk about cost of recycling. When we look about virgin plastics, we do not take into account negative externalities associated with that. Everything that is manufactured new is a new product that's on our Earth, that then needs to be recycled again. So that's not taken into account. And that's extremely important, and we're seeing now that there is a major shift in the market of this price not the cost, but the price not being correlated anymore. It used to be that recycled plastics had a very close correlation with virgin plastics, with the price usually being slightly lower, because people were saying, oh, the quality is not quite as good, we're not willing to pay quite as much for this product. And of course, the virgin plastic price correlating with the oil price. Now, we've seen a major shift in that in the last couple of years, that this correlation has been broken, and that the price for recycled plastic is actually significantly higher than the price of virgin plastics, which is due to the fact that all these different manufacturers, all these different brands have demand for recycled plastics, and they cannot meet it, and they will not be able to meet their recycling targets that they have set for themselves. Many of these being, by the way, listed companies that have to meet these goals, which is why the cost, I think, will continue to spread. And that, to me, is a good thing, because it incentivizes recycling. It incentivizes companies to move into this field, to collect plastics, to recycle plastics, and that will create circular economies, and that will create less virgin plastic being produced. So to me, this trend is very, very positive. And I welcome this decorrelation.
Jakob, adding to that, I think a very smart move is what we see in Singapore and also in Europe, is to impose the new laws and the additional cost on the producers and not on the consumers. Because when the producers, everybody who wants to produce a product and sell it in a respective market, if they all have to bear the same cost, then it's a level playing field, and the consumers themselves do not have a choice of a more expensive good product and a product that is maybe not so good but nobody sees, so I vote with my wallet and do not change secretly my behavior. And that's what happens with clothes and fast fashion, for example. People say they want to have responsible clothes, but they still buy the fast fashion. So I think that approach, what you mentioned, in addition to who is having to bear the cost and then pass it on to the consumer, that would give this level playing field where everybody has no more choice. But of course, the cost increase over the next couple of years for this transition will be dramatic, so there need to be some ways to cushion the impact and to facilitate the transition, whether it's mobility or energy or sustainability. So that's then, I think, where governments come in to kind of redistribute a little bit the cost until the consumer behavior has changed. But it's complex.
Thank you very much, Edwin Q. Also, and I think this is already our
Can
last
I maybe just
round.
pitch in?
Yes, please go ahead, and then Dr. Schwenken as well.
I think what I'm hearing from Jakob and Holger is very encouraging, because this, let me just share, one of our members, and most of our members are all relatively new. This company actually came to me and asked me, he said, I supply 80% of the drinking water bottles in PET to Singapore. So he's just a contract manufacturer. He extrudes the bottles. He puts a label for whoever who wants to buy that water. The water is basically the same. The bottles are the same, just the label outside, and you can basically, as a company, tell him exactly what you want on the label, and he'll do it for you. Okay? Now, he is now asking, in terms of the PET resins that are being recycled, can you actually identify that all the resins or the pellets used for the recycling can be recognized? That means there is a watermark. There is technology around this right now, and that the plant that we're looking at will have this technology. And guess what? He's come to join us. He wants to invest in that plant because his customers are not prepared to accept a 50-50 bottle. They want a 100% recycled bottle, and he has to prove the fact that this bottle has 100% of recycled resins in it. So he's not concerned about the cost. His customers are not concerned about the cost. One of his customers is SIA. Why would an airline want to have 100%? Because they need to get through the ESG issue. But you don't want glass bottles on planes. It's heavy. So they still need to serve it with plastic bottles. But they want to make sure that these bottles are made from 100% recycled material. Okay, and the other corporations, MBS is asking him to do the same thing. So it's now being pushed by consumers and his customers.
Thank you very much. Dr. Schwenken, famous last words, please, because I get unmistakable signs from my colleagues and they get wilder. So we kind of have to come to an end, unfortunately, but I would like you also to have the chance to say a last sentence.
First of all, I can everything which has been said confirm from my side. I'm fully on the same page. I think at the moment we see a development in all fields. We see the consumer is changing, we see the government is changing, we see the industry is changing, and we see that technology-wise everything is possible. So I think there's by far more movements than some people who are not close in the topic believe there is. So I'm really positive. So if I compare the current situation with maybe only 3 years ago, it's a very different story, and that's good to see. And since we are coming to the end, I would like to cover real quick one question. There was a question whether COVID-19 was pushing plastics which are used only for one time. And my answer would be split in two parts. Number one is yes, it has pushed it again, unfortunately. So there are more plastics which are used only for one time. If you consider takeaway food or something like that, that has increased, and that has increased that use of plastic in the first place. But the good thing is, soon after that, the question was coming up, okay, what do we do in order to recycle that parts? And if you recycle plastic, it's usually by far better than recycling some other materials. So there's a great chance in that. And that discussion has been pushed by COVID-19, one-way usage of plastics. So it's again, in the first place, more stuff. In the second place, immediate discussion, how can we ensure that this one is coming back into the circle? And therefore, I think it has brought it on everybody's mind. And that is good in order to push this recycling on everybody's mind and push the quote into a higher level.
It has been a delight with the four of you, and my absolute pleasure to spend the last 45 minutes with you here and with you here, and to listen to your insights of the topic. Thank you very much. Please put your hands together for this fabulous group of 4 people at that panel. I wish you all a wonderful evening ahead, and we are now looking forward to the closing remarks of the chairman of our Sustainability Committee. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Once again, a very, very big thank you to our panel moderator, Margit 𝗏𝗏. Thank you also to our panelists on site, Edwin Q, 𝗥𝗲𝗰𝗆𝗺𝗺, Holger Lindner, as well as our virtual panelist, Dr. 𝗚𝗏𝗿𝗺𝗺. So sorry. I pronounced that correctly. All right, and of course, right now we'd now like to invite Joachim Ihrcke, our chairman of the SGC Sustainability Committee, on stage for his closing remarks. Joachim, please, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, we heard a lot about plastics recycling during this forum, and I hope you all benefited from the insights delivered by our esteemed speakers, the panelists, and from the answers to the questions from the audience. Plastics recycling per se is only a small part of today's bigger problem. What to do with the 300 million tons of single-use plastic the world produces each year? That plastic waste ends up in landfills, in the oceans, in incinerators, or is simply dumped. Everyone has to contribute to the solution as much as she or he can, and we have to start now. The SGC president, Jens Rübbert, suggested that we start in a field where we can really make a mark and do something meaningful. The Sustainability Committee of the SGC identified the recycling of plastics as one of the areas where the problem is ubiquitous, the solution exists for some years, the technology is clear, and the action plan is really simple. Get rid of the 500 million bottles that Singapore produces every year. Traditionally, plastic waste was always incinerated, and this is still the preferred disposal method worldwide. However, plastics is made from fossil fuel. By incinerating plastics in Singapore, we utilize its calorific value to not only burn our waste, but in the process also generate electricity. Singapore does not contribute to the plastics in the ocean. But incineration of plastics just shifts the problem from the ground to the air. Each ton of plastics incinerated creates 3 tons of CO2. And even if half of the energy produced is used to generate electricity, we are still left with 1.5 tons CO2 emission for every ton of plastic waste incinerated. Recycling instead of incinerating would thus be a much better solution for the environment. But that's only half the story. If you recycle 1 ton of plastics properly, You can use the recycled material again as feedstock and would not have to use virgin plastic material because recycling this would truly be circular and would save us another 1.7 ton. These were some of the reasons why SGC and the Sustainability Committee members decided to start the PET bottle-to-bottle recycling plant as the first project of a larger plan to foster cooperation between recycling specialist companies from Germany and Austria, with interested cooperation partners from the precision engineering sector, and with Singaporean companies presently already active in waste collection or processing. The proposed plant that we are aiming at will have the ability to save almost 100,000 tons of greenhouse gases per annum. And this illustrates also how we calculate feasibility in the future. It is not only the money we make, but it is also the impact on the environment that someone has to pay for. To be able to coordinate all these cooperation efforts, we established the Plastics Recycling Association Singapore, PRAS, as Edwin has explained earlier. All of us know how important it is to reduce carbon emissions, and all nations are pledging to play their part. Plastics, as I mentioned before, is made from fossil fuel, and the greenhouse gases released during the manufacturing processes are an important contributor to global warming. The threat of global warming is no longer of academic interest, but becomes clear through real-life, everyday pictures of catastrophic wildfires, prolonged droughts, massive floodings, devastating tornadoes, diminishing glaciers, rising sea levels, and so on. All nations agreed at the Paris Climate Accord in 2015 that 1.5 degrees of global warming by the end of this century is the red line that must not be crossed. We are now standing at 1.2 degrees. Europe is beginning to act. The first successful examples exist. Regulatory frameworks are in place. Carbon emissions as the main drivers of global warming is recognized. Carbon credit systems are being established. COP26, the United Nations Climate Conference in Glasgow next month, will build on these Paris Climate Accord commitments and agree to further CO2 reductions so that by 2050 we hopefully are carbon neutral. Then we can sit back and let Mother Nature do her job to reduce greenhouse gases by natural means, i.e. photosynthesis, for instance, by absorption by the oceans and so on, so that we can hand over to our grandchildren a climate that existed at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. But if it's so clear what needs to be done, why should it take 30 years to get there? Because it is painful. Painful for politicians because they are not sure their voters will understand and appreciate. Painful for business because investors don't know how sustainability efforts will be measured in future and whether they still can make money under the new rules. And it is most painful for us, the common people and taxpayers, because we suspect that we are the ones who eventually have to pay for it. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, sounded the red alert for our planet and at his recent UN address. We cannot wait until everyone realizes it is too late, but we need to act now. We cannot face our grandchildren and tell them that we saw the disaster coming but did nothing. So let's get going and clean up the mess that we made. And it all starts with recycling. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Joachim. That was indeed a very nice closing statement, especially starting with recycling, okay?